So let's maybe
Mm,
start out a little bit with, if I was an MSP in my first couple of years of existence, what are some of the things that I'm probably doing wrong that you see as a coach traditionally being done wrong that I should focus on?
wow. Oh man, that's a deep well of question there. But I think I think to start, one thing is that most MSPs really don't understand their numbers, and it's kind of like, hey, at the end of the day, finance is kind of the language of business, and as much as you may hate it, it's something that you've got to learn. And I hear from owners all the time. It's like, oh, I'm terrible on the financial side. It's really just not my thing. And I'm like, well, okay. I'm terrible at Mandarin. I can't really speak it very well. Well, that's because I haven't learned it, right? I haven't studied it. And if you can really actually take the time to learn and study the financial side of things, that's going to really be a game changer. For instance, like most MSP owners I talk to, if I ask them, "Hey, what's your gross margin on managed services?" Either A, they have no idea, well, they don't even know what that means, or they really don't know, or they give me a wrong number, like 86%. And I'm like, no, it's not 86%, right? Because you're not accounting for it correctly, right? You're not counting all of your costs in there. So even just understanding basic numbers like what's your gross margin, what are your SG&A costs, what's your EBITDA. That there's people that don't understand what those things mean, but that's kind of the language of how do you think about what you're ultimately going to be worth and value, and B, how do you actually pull the levers that need to be pulled in order to make yourself more profitable.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges there. And we talk about it a lot on the show is most MSP owners were accidental entrepreneurs. That's changing a
Hmm.
little bit now, where there are some people focused and intentionally coming into the industry, but a lot of times it was technical leaders found themselves in a position where they either had some customers and were starting to grow it and saw they had a business, or came from other walks of life and thought they could do it better and came into the industry. And while these people are terrific servants, do a great job of catering to the customer, the person they forget about most often is themselves, right? And learning things like SG&A and how that's different than just cost of goods sold and what that does for your gross margin and how that impacts EBITDA, you can never start too early on that, because the other misnomer I see from a lot of MSPs is, hey, I'm years away from that. Well, it always gets here quicker than you think. And it's a two, and I'm sure you'll get into it later, but it's not something you can go, okay, I'm going to sell, put a signpost up and get out tomorrow if you want to maximize your exit. So there's some
Yes.
planning there. And the earlier you start, probably the better you are.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And that's the next thing that I kind of think about is, just to your point, which is like, hey, we're accidental entrepreneurs, or it's just like, hey, I woke up one day and I've got this business and I don't know what to do with it. Well, if you want to grow it and ultimately scale it, you have to have a different mindset, right? Then hey, this is my job. I'm a tech guy, like, so I do tech, but I just happen to do it in this business. Well, if you want to, I mean, that's probably fine when you're a million. If you want to be 10 million, you got to be a different person than that, right? You have to be a leader of leaders. You have to be a team builder, and you have to have a completely different mindset. And one of those mindsets that I think is lost a lot of the time on newer or smaller MSPs is shareholder, right? So that's like, if you can change from I'm a tech guy to I'm a shareholder in a business, then that can flip a switch. That's like, oh, hey, if I'm a shareholder, that means that I should expect a return on my investment every year. That means that if I'm invested in the stock market, like, hey, like, what would you say if the company just decided, we don't really need to make money this quarter? Well, guess what? You're probably going to sell that stock, right? So, do you want to buy your stock or do you want to sell your stock? What if they were like, we're not going to do a 10K this quarter. That's probably not that important. Well, yeah, so things like that, like thinking about, hey, how can I change that mindset from a technician, or from a or from just like a, hey, this is a really, this is a cool business, to I'm actually a shareholder in this enterprise, and this thing is actually meant to return something over time. And and I think of that in terms as well of value creation, right? How much value as the shareholder do you want to create from this asset that you have built? And that value, the amount of value that it creates, should be enough to serve the lifestyle that you ultimately want to achieve as well. So